more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America. That out. But what I was saying was, looks like the narrative of cash is trash is going to be sped up because Jerome Powell references that the economy is deteriorating at a rapid pace, and so therefore they're opening up all types of new facilities or lending windows, and it looks like they're going to be buying junk bonds eventually or ETFs directly, and they're also going to be supporting states and municipalities with all those pension implosions that's going on. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happening at a much more faster rate than we could have expected, I believe. So chat-wise, I appreciate everybody for giving me a heads up on the sound. We got Charles, we got Ordained for Real, we got Pat, John the 10th Man, we got Kamitha, Sam. Okay, so a good amount of people here. Appreciate you guys taking time with me. And also, as a way of trying to get more people involved, I'm assuming we got to have some other content creators out there. And so I want to have like a little social hangout. And so I'll keep you guys informed as to what I'm referring to. But it's going to be a way of trying to get it, see how many people I can get on a hangout. And so I'm going to be putting together some stuff. So if anybody has interest in hanging out via video and, been willing to, show your beautiful face out there, I would love to connect with you guys and hang out and just, entertain ourselves a little bit. All right. So let's get right into the story of the day. Very first article here, pretty much says it all. And it's one of the things where unless you're new to the party, you already knew where we stood. But here's an interesting article here. It says the Fed Chair Powell says U.S. economy deteriorating with alarming speed. So it's not too often that they tell the truth, but then they tell the truth mentioning that's deteriorating with alarming speed, which means that if you even go in a little bit deeper, it probably means we're up a creek without a paddle and no way of steering this thing, and they're losing control of things. And it shows from all the things that they're looking to create as far as lending windows, like, who the hell are you lending to and expect to get it paid back? But I'll thumb through some of this and then dive a little deeper into some other articles, all tied into the same subject matter. It says on Thursday, the U.S. economy is in an emergency and is deteriorating with alarming speed. His remarks came shortly after the central unveiled over $2 trillion in new loans. So once again, new loans. Loans refer to something extended towards somebody with the idea of it being repaid. Once again, with things crumbling and all these promises are being defaulted upon, where will the capital come to be into existence unless it comes from the central banks to be able to repay back? So once again, these are not loans. These are basically bailouts in its greatest form, with there's no end in sight, because I want to say I just heard that the national debt just went up above $24 trillion. So we're still setting records at a very alarming pace. It says people have been asked to put their lives and livelihoods on hold at a significant economic and personal cost. Powell said in Brookings Institute webcast, we are moving with alarming speed with 50-year lows and unemployment to what will likely be very high. Yeah, 50-year lows, if you believe that. It says Powell called for a national discussion about what it would take to reopen the economy. So once again, you will not be reopening this economy at a time where the alleged cover-up of this whole health situation is the reason why people are, not able to participate in this economy. But on top of that, whether it was this health scare or whatever event that was needed, there was going to come a day where these type of issues would arise because of the very fact that, there's no growth. There's no way of growing our way out of a debt-based system. And so it was going to come to an end anyway, but I think it's more believable for the public to think that it's because of this health scare. And so once again, we got job numbers out. Looks like we're, setting records with that as well. It says more than 17 million Americans have filed for unemployment aid in the past 4 weeks as the nation has entered a national emergency due to the global pandemic. Okay. It says the Fed sweeping new loan programs unveiled Thursday will provide $2 trillion in additional aid to small, medium, and large companies. Once again, I don't think the aid will actually reach those entities as we're being told, but believe what you want to believe. It says as well as cash-strapped states and cities. So they're starting to bail out the states and cities now. It says the last actions are in addition to the central bank slashing interest rates to zero in March and buying numerous government bonds in an effort to keep borrowing as cheap as possible. So once again, we've witnessed, if we've learned anything over the last 10 plus years, is that expanding the monetary base, offering all these so-called loans, and the Federal Reserve taking all this on their balance sheet, there's no way of unwinding this because there will be no one to sell this stuff to. And so once again, it's going to be a continuation of more of the same where there will be no tightening of any kind, which is basically repaying back those taxes, those loans. And when it comes to borrowing and lending to states and governments, it's going to be more so on the taxpayers' back. And so even in Ben Bernanke's last little spiel, which I talked about last night, he was talking about, it ultimately falls on the taxpayers. But then again, who's going to be paying taxes if you're not working? And so, it's going to be a all-out collision. And I wanted to share with you some of the numbers. Let's get to some of the numbers of what they're actually going to be looking to dish out. And so let me see. This is a different article. 50 billion short-term borrowing. Okay, so many states and cities are warning they are about to run out of cash as tax revenues have been dried up and costs have skyrocketed to deal with the health crisis. Fed plans to purchase up to $500 billion in short-term bonds from all 50 states. So, wow. $500 billion to aid small businesses, 500 employees or more, 1 million. What else we got here? $350 billion alone. So there's other articles out there with more details. I actually misplaced that other one. But as you can see, this is the last ditch effort to try to keep this thing afloat in the midst of the Federal Reserve. So ultimately, the Federal Reserve, with all this lending and unprecedented monetary policy, Justin March, I appreciate you for the love offering. So for the news segments, no calls. Just want to get your thoughts in the chat, rant a little bit about these stories. But we're literally witnessing with all this accommodative policy. The Federal Reserve is literally like they're making it rain right now. And anybody who needs any type of liquidity, they're just Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve FOMC meetings, they're gonna be doing this for the rest of the year. And imagine all the people who are not able to actually participate in all that rain making that they're creating right now. It's very sad because while they're able to create with ease, you still have a small part of the population that goes to work or delivers value into existence with the idea of being compensated in the same thing that they're just, putting out there with ease. Ah, man, sad day for this globe. R.C. Murray, I appreciate that super chat there. And so Henry Brown, appreciate that as well. It says, do you think in May the economy going to restart according to the Fed? The 16.8 million unemployment isn't it everywhere a taxpayer like sales tax? Isn't everyone a taxpayer like sales tax, etc.? Yes, Henry Brown, very true. So my personal opinion is that the economy will not be restarting in May because I don't think they'll be able to get a hold of this global pandemic by that time. And so, as always, the governments are reactive. And so right now they're talking about just still testing and ventilators. They're not talking about the vaccine. So the vaccine comes in, apparently, if that's going to be the way that they're going to try to solve this issue with the vaccine, that comes next year, more than likely. So everything between now and summer and fall will be emergency measures of all kinds. Trump talking about opening up the economy, but you can't open up the economy when people's health are their primary concern. No one's going to actually be willing to go back to work if there's jobs for them to go to because businesses are closing. So businesses will not be opening up. So employment will ramp up like never before. So the unemployment numbers we're seeing now, as you say, 60.8, that's small in comparison to what's coming. And that's just, how this thing will unfold. At the same time, the Federal Reserve and all central banks will be overly accommodative, ultimately destroying the very same products they're putting out there, which are the currencies. And so Spirit King says, apparently they snuck a secret provision on the stimulus bill, giving an additional $500 billion to the Federal Reserve, almost without oversight. Highway robbery in progress. So at this point, as I mentioned, they're going to do whatever it takes to keep this thing afloat. So don't be surprised by anything as far as a number being given. There's no number too big now that will be recommended or suggested to paper over a crumbling economy. So yeah, it's going to be a joint effort by all central banks, I believe. And so what else we got here? It says the Fed acting with the Treasury to act as a pope. Well, historically, pandemics have been 18 to 12 months, right? I guess so. I've never really lived or been aware of too many pandemics in my lifetime that caused measures like this, and I don't think there ever were any. It says, wouldn't it make sense to develop a steroid to build up people's immune system instead of vaccines? That has a lot of controversy. Hearing Brown, I agree. And so you'll never hear any type of educational information on how to improve our immune systems and what type of treatments or things that we can do to combat this pandemic without having to take vaccines. But the vaccine narrative is a part of the global agenda of us all getting, bagged and tagged and processed for this next world order that they already have in play for us. So vaccines are what they're going to recommend, because they want us all to be a part of this new system they're going to roll out, which is going to be digital based with, you're going to have to get permission to travel. You got to get permission to do anything in this new system they're going to try to roll out. So it's all by design, of course. So basically nothing we hear from our leadership or from the central bank should come as a surprise to you if you know that this is all them trying to play catch up to maintain the status quo. Jay says, many of us here won't have jobs and will be totally reliant on government for everything in 18 months. Don't you get this plan is hundreds of years long? Jay, no doubt. And here's another thing people may not have considered really, is that as this unwinds, the very concept of employment is going to change. So the new norm will not be anything we will recognize, because it's going to be a digital payment system only for everything. The concept of retirement is going to be out the door, because people will realize after these currencies, are the problems that are the primary reasons, the problems they're going to be experiencing. You won't be able to sell the concept of giving labor up front with the promise in the future of getting compensated for it for the rest of your life. So that's going to be thrown away. And you're going to have the way in which people exchange labor or are no longer needed to exchange labor, because universal basic income will be coming. Because think about this. Corporations only need consumers, and they don't really necessarily need men and women anymore the way that they did 100 years ago when the industrial age started. So now, entering into this technologically advanced society that they're going to bring into existence, automation, robotics, AI, virtual reality, Internet of Things, 5G, 6G, 8G, all that stuff that's coming will make it so that robots will be highly sought after. So between 2020 and 2030, by 2025, corporations will shift towards robotics anyway. So there will be no more manufacturing plant lines where people are needed to do menial tasks for, if it's stuff that can be automated, consider your job to be gone and it may not come back. So people are going to be forced to find new ways to deliver value, and it will not be set with selling your time directly to an employer, because they won't no longer need you unless it's a very high skill set type of position. And so, Rolf, they already got those type of robots, my friend. I've seen videos of people out there doing their thing. Cash App sent me a push notification that they could get my stimulus check to me quick, fast. Doom. Very true. So Square, which is a company that owns Cash App, they've pretty much put it out there that, they would recommend the IRS or the government use them, because everybody has that Cash App or Venmo or PayPal. So if they really want to get that stuff out to you, they would use those services, but they don't really want to use those services now because they're coming out with their own apps and services of that kind. Tyler D says, rethinking now, do you think that the fact that most of those that had a good run in the stock market cashing out gains will have a big surprise of a bail-in because they sit in cash in the bank? So I touched on bail-ins last night. So bail-ins are a part of the equation as this thing unfolds, but I would imagine there'll probably, be no need to really bail in the banks as long as the, FOMC and the Federal Reserve is going to be just making it rain, because they'll always have all the liquidity that's needed. So you can probably actually end up getting out what's in the bank But getting that out, it's going to be a race to get it out to then get it into something else because of this extreme measures that we're in, the race to tangible resources will become very obvious. And so all the things that are undervalued or real, like, it's going to, think about all the prior historical lessons we've heard throughout time where people get paid on Friday and they're looking to find a way to get out of that check right away to go get something. And so you hear about all the stories in Zimbabwe and White My Republic, how on Friday people would go to the bar to try to spend that check as soon as they could because getting beer, getting drunk, and at that time, you were able to get more for your currency as opposed to waiting a couple hours or a day. You know what I'm saying? You can probably get 10 beers for your check as opposed to 5 the next day or 1 because of the cost of those goods going up. So bail-ins will be the reaction to inflation. Could be a possibility. I'm trying to play that through in my mind. Not sure how that'll work. Gregory Todd says, if the concept of employment and retirement will no longer be there and all that will be there as universal basic income for everyone, why even partake in their new system? Gregory, because if you're alive, you're still going to need tangible resources, food, clothing, shelter, and all that stuff like that. You'll still be required to pay for those things because I think commerce will still go on. It's just going to be how we interact with businesses and corporations and the banking sector will be different. And so governments will try to be the backstop or be the primary mediator between the banking system and the corporate world and the people. So from this, the government will take on more powers, offering more services to us because a lot of people who don't realize what's going on are not prepared with having financial insurance to shield themselves during this transition. So they're going to be susceptible to all their promises being reneged upon and their currency defaulting on them because of this central bank implosion. So you're still going to have to spend some for currency of some kind to go get some food and to pay for your living and housing. Everything will remain the same in nature, but the quality of that, especially in this country, is going to be a lot lower, I believe, because the currency won't buy as much. But let me get back to some more stories because I'm ranting too much. But I appreciate those questions and those thoughts. Next article here. Once again, it's interesting to get more stories from these same institutions that are the reason for we're entrapping us. And as I look above the screen here, we got, let me see here. We got gold. It says gold right now is at 1,700. So metals are going to be rewarded very well at this current moment. And what else we got up top that's doing well? All right, so it says here, story says IMF sees world in worst recession since Great Depression. And so here's the thing, like I mentioned a week or two ago, why even call it a recession? Recession is what we're used to, what we're going to experience now that's underway with these type of, statements being made by Jerome Powell is a depression. Like this first quarter that just ended was like anything we've never seen since the Great Depression. This quarter we're currently in now, as this thing unwinds, will be even worse than the first quarter of this year. So as long as there's this cover up of this global pandemic being the catalyst for the reason why economies around the world have come to a halt, this whole year will be negative GDP type quarters to where if they were to be honest, they would just admit now that it's a depression now. But the only thing that makes it different from yesteryears is technology is still the primary function of everything because people are not forced to actually. Even though I'm seeing reports about bread lines are they don't have enough food and people are cash strapped and all that stuff like that, which is real, but it's not as obvious because we got social media to where you still can somehow, some way see some good news out of all this. I'm not sure how though. It says with half of 189 members countries seeking aid, the executive board has agreed to double its access to emergency financing to meet expected demand of $100 billion. So the IMF is offering $100 billion. Okay, as if that's really going to do much for a quadrillion dollar problem. Think about this: our entire globe, the ultimate. If you add up all the financial assets they call themselves putting together, with derivatives being the leader. And we're at 1.4 quadrillion in derivatives. Central banks will have to at least come up with those type of funds to paper over all those derivatives of those derivatives of derivatives. So yeah, this stuff is so technical. I don't even know how to even go too far in depth into it, because this is a hell of a sideshow we're a part of. Next article here says world economy faces 5 trillion hit that is like losing Japan. So once again, 5 trillion, 1 billion, 100 million. Yeah, these type of numbers, they're all done on the financial realm. All the central banks and the too big to fail banks, these are numbers that they are the reasons for us having to come be a part of this fiasco. Here's another one here. It says stocks are just as expensive now as they were before the crash. And so with the markets rallying, I saw something today that businesses right now that aren't even open, their stocks are rallying. How the hell does that happen in a sane world? Like who no one that's unemployed is thinking about buying equities right now. Only people who might be involved on an active basis are traders, those looking to profit off of these fluctuations. And then you got all the institutions that are being directly funded by the Federal Reserve. So expect the Dow, as a result of all this counterfeit fund money that's being created, the Dow will probably continue to go up in the midst of more people being laid off. So think about this. Years and years ago, well before my time of knowing anything about investing, I was always taught that the equity markets and the bond market were people actually chasing yield, people who looking to put aside for compound interest. Like, you set aside $100 and then in time compound interest would, you'll have $1 million by the time you retire. At this current rate, a lot of people might end up being millionaires well ahead of time. But when you have currencies racing to the bottom, what I was trying to think was, here in America, in the developed world, having a reserve currency, the concept of being a millionaire, like who wants to be a millionaire, was always looked at something that was an achievement worth striving for, because it was a reflection of how much value you brought into existence, or how blessed you were. But imagine in an environment where currencies and the amount of currency that's created will become so abundant that being a millionaire won't be enough to do much. Because think about what $1 million can do for you now as opposed to 20 years ago. Or if you go back 30 years, what $1 million can do. So imagine $1 million 5 years from now at the rate that they're creating. And I keep doing this because people who realize the whole idea of making it rain, that's ultimately what they're doing. They're being overly accommodative to prop up everything. And so I think the very concept of being a millionaire, like a liquid millionaire in Federal Reserve notes, definitely 3, 4, 5 years from now won't have the same amount of purchasing power that it does now, as well as in the days ahead. So once again, as I always say, you'll never be able to save or earn enough currency to continue the current lifestyle you have in a world where central banks around the world are devaluing currencies at an alarming rate. And so the beneficiary of this excessive monetary policy and the race to resources is the amount of weight and tangible assets you're able to accumulate while all this funny money is still something that people want to receive. And so here's the very last article here, or two last articles. It says department stores top the list of consumer companies most likely to default on debt. So amongst unemployment, now you got buku retail stores that will not be paying their rent or their leases, and they're going to be reneging and jumping from all those debt obligations. And so it says here that jumped to higher than 40% or more for industries earlier this month. That's compared with being up 10% at the end of February. So month by month, as all these retail stores around us, they close their doors because they don't have customers, they won't be able to, they're not going to be borrowing from this SBA small business loan because most of these businesses will not even open their doors up once again, because we're going to find out which companies were always needed and which companies were only in existence because, the U.S. was a consumer nation up until this point. So yeah, just stories like this. And you see these type of statistics here. It says median market signal 1 year probability of default industry: department stores, hotel chains, tires and rubber, leisure facilities, casinos and gambling. So yeah, the highest median market signal default. So once again, restaurants, home furnishing, warehouses, auto parts and equipment. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing onslaught of things happening here. And as I'm talking, I'm realizing that I didn't even show you guys the articles, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm up here talking. So let me actually, I'll go back here so you guys can see what I was attempting to talk about. And so these articles here, I'll put them in the chat. If anybody has interest to read up on them for yourself, feel free to do so. But these were the articles I was mentioning as I was ranting without it being on the screen. But yeah, these are just mainstream stories. And as always, mainstream story, they give it in a very user-friendly viewpoint. And I always like to take the worst case, which is saying I like to double all their numbers just to be safe. And that's kind of where things tend to fall at the end of the day. And so, but to end on some good news, for those that might not think there is good news out there, there is good news. For those that have been anticipating this day of complete demolition of our current monetary world order, it said gold ends at its highest since October 12 as dollar declines on the back of the Fed's new lending plans or new easing plans. I think once we accept the fact that they're not lending, because there'll be no way of repaying this back, because even the taxpayers are going to be tapped out. So the new giving away plans, having some weight in your possession, it won't solve your problems, but it'll help ease some of the financial pinch, especially if you were one of the people who were heavily dependent upon future promises that will be reneged upon as a result of all this excessive accommodative $2.3 trillion to boost the economy. So this is just $2.3 trillion in this article here in easing programs for this month. So think about May and then June, and everything's going to get exponentially worse. It's going to speed up and go faster and just accelerate. It's going to accelerate to new all-time highs and everything in a very unfortunate way. So all these trillions they're going to have to grow. So yeah, metals will be recipients of that in nominal price, and therefore nominal price of metals. And so one metal that's lagging is silver. And so silver is nowhere to be found. But we all know JP Morgan is sitting on several hundred million tons, I believe. And so they have plans. So JP Morgan is going to be the last too big to fail bank standing, because JP Morgan might be the only too big to fail bank sitting on some actual weight right now that we know about at least. So that is what's going on in the news. Thought I would just take a minute, share what's happening, get your thoughts on it. I appreciate those for tuning in and just chiming in via chat. And so as I always want to do, signing off, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, stay connected with us. If we have content creators out there and we have other people, because everyone here has a unique perspective and spin on things, I want to do something later today, try to get people connected. So if we have people out there that want to join this hangout, like I do, I usually have 4 or 5 people on. I want to try to see how many people I can get on one live stream via Zoom. And so in order to do that, if you want to be a part of the video live stream, it's not meant to be for spamming and nothing like that. I want to actually help other content creators out. I want you guys to go to the Rethinking a Dollar page. I'm only going to extend the invitation to those that are a part of the Rethinking a Dollar community chat. So if you go over to Rethinking a Dollar and you go up to the very top and you click on login or become a member. So I actually show you, we got, a couple people over there. If you become a member, shoot me a message and then I'll reply to your message. I'll send you a link to connect to the chat, and then you can join us for the chat. And I'll probably end up doing it, somewhere early before my live streams, just to try it out and see how it goes. Because I'm curious to see how that, how many people I can get on a live stream at one time and just go back and forth, talk trash to each other, in a good sense. So here are some of the people who's already signed up. So there are people in the community. So if you're interested in being a part of the live stream via video, where I can see you see me, go set up an account, a little free account here, and let's connect. So other than that, be blessed, be safe. I'll see you guys later. If you want to support the channel, feel free to do so via Patreon. Information is beneath this video. Connect with me on these social media platforms. And other than that, let's stay connected and just keep your eyes open, because things are accelerating at a fast pace. And hopefully you are one of the individuals that have taken precautionary measures well before now, to where you're going to see more people in the days ahead looking to scramble, and the metal sources will dry up, because the high net worth individuals are going to be trying to get out of the paper and digits as fast as they can, and it's going to leave very, very little for those that are of lesser means, just trying to get a couple ounces here and there. So, but that is all she wrote. Be blessed, be safe, and here's a message for you. Hey there, sorry for this interruption, but I wanted to bring something to your attention. If you've been enjoying this live stream, why don't you partner with me and be a support to the channel via Patreon membership for just a minimum of $5 a month. All you have to do is scroll down beneath this video here, click the Patreon link, then consider donating as little as $5 a month toward the channel. A little bit of crumbs can go a long way, and I appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to this live stream. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k.